What if the entities reported across millennia, the aliens, the fairies, the machine elves of DMT visions, aren't mere figments, but encounters with a hidden reality? Graham Hancock's Supernatural embarks on a radical investigation, starting not with ancient myths, but with direct personal experience. In Bath, England, Hancock undertakes a research-driven ingestion of Ibogaine, derived from the African Therianthropes iboga root. This is no recreational trip. It's a calculated plunge into an altered state to understand the very origins of belief in other worlds. The effects are immediate and brutal. Initial boredom evaporates into sudden, terrifying paralysis. His body loses balance, racked by uncontrollable tremors, dizziness, and waves of nausea. Cold sweat beads on his skin as the world warps. Auditory hallucinations, ringing, buzzing, compound the sensory assault. Vision blurs, obstructed by shifting black lines. Time loses all meaning. He describes the sensation of his body being smashed and dismembered, an echo of ancient shamanic ordeals of death and rebirth. Vertigo escalates, a feeling of balancing over an abyss, reality itself destabilizing. Behind closed eyes, the first visions emerge, classic entoptic phenomena, vivid geometric lattices, arabesques, Celtic knotwork, pulsing with internal light. But opening his eyes banishes them, grounding him momentarily before the deeper dive begins. This isn't just about patterns. It's about confronting the potential source of humanity's oldest, most profound beliefs. The geometric visions fade, overwritten by something far stranger. The startlingly close profile of a blond young man, skin pallid, tinged with green mold, his expression reproachful, a potential contact with the dead. This aligns precisely with Iboga's indigenous context in Central Africa, where the Bwiti secret society utilizes the plant. Their origin myth speaks of the god Zame planting the fingers and toes of the slain pygmy Bitamu, growing the Iboga bush. Bitamu's wife Dasumba, discovering the plant in a cave and eating its roots, was the first to see the dead, contacting her husband and ancestors. Chemically, the Therianthropes iboga root bark contains potent indole alkaloids, primarily ibogaine. Bwiti initiates explicitly seek encounters with supernatural beings and spirits of the dead, often guided by deceased relatives. But this requires consuming near-toxic doses, risking fatal overdose. Hancock's motive wasn't arbitrary. He was researching the before and after moment around 40,000 years ago. The sudden explosion of symbolic behavior, art, and religion in human prehistory, marked by European cave paintings depicting not just animals, but Therianthropes, human-animal hybrids. The prevailing theory posits these arose from ASCs induced by psychoactive plants. Hancock felt personal experimentation was vital to understand if such visions could genuinely forge belief in spirit realms and an afterlife, insights potentially missed by detached academics. Compounding this was personal grief, his father's recent death and guilt over his absence. Ibogaine's promise of ancestor contact offered potential closure. Back in the trance, supporters fade. He feels trapped in a stone sarcophagus. The room fills with shadowy figures. Then, the spirit of Iboga appears, a lean, dark-skinned African figure with obsidian eyes known to abduct souls. Later, dreamlike fragments surface. His father among phantoms, an exotic temple, a giant dancing figure. Was it dreaming? Real? Does the spirit survive death? Towards morning, a mild out-of-body experience occurs, floating near the ceiling, detached curiosity, echoing a teenage NDE and Bwiti reports. The ordeal concludes with prolonged illness, then sudden recovery and ravenous hunger. Crucially, the preceding intense depression and grief vanishes. Ibogaine flipped a switch. Whether via spirit contact or brain chemistry, the healing felt real, validating his quest into the visionary origins of spirituality. From personal ordeal, Hancock shifts to the archaeological enigma driving his inquiry. The sophisticated art found deep within Upper Paleolithic caves like Pech Merle in France. This sanctuary, used for roughly 10,000 years starting 25,000 years ago, wasn't habitation. It was a sacred space, visited infrequently by small groups, likely shamans, braving perilous darkness with simple lamps. Their goal, creating images on carefully chosen surfaces. The cave itself feels otherworldly, a kingdom of the dwarves and elves, a frozen time capsule. Even with modern lights, the atmosphere suggests why it might have been perceived as an anteroom to the underworld, a numinous place where the veil between worlds thinned. Entering the main chamber, the Salle prehistoric, one encounters the frieze noir. Dated around 16,000 years old, these black manganese drawings depict mammoths, bison, aurochs, and horses. Crucially, they are superimposed on older red ochre markings from perhaps 20,000 years ago. More importantly, the figures possess an illusion of emergence. They seem to manifest directly from the rock face, hinting at a profound belief, the rock itself as a membrane, a portal through which beings from another dimension could enter ours. This wasn't just decoration, it was likely interaction with perceived spiritual forces imminent in the cave. Deeper exploration of Pech Merle reveals more wonders, reinforcing the intentionality and otherworldly focus. High ledges feature spectral black figures seemingly emerging through natural clefts. Finger tracings on ceilings, accessible only by climbing, depict mammoths and voluptuous Paleolithic Venus figures. Fossilized footprints of a child near giant cave bear claw marks evoke shared humanity and ancient mystery. Incised art in barely accessible galleries includes bear heads and geometric symbols. The Wounded Man alcove, requiring the viewer to lie down, presents a red ochre figure pierced by spear-like lines, floating weightlessly, its head disturbingly non-human, perhaps bird-like, perhaps elfin. Nearby negative handprints offer an intimate "I was here," alongside stylized Venus figures, possibly bison women. The masterpiece is the Spotted Horses panel, two large, ancient charcoal horses, framed by negative handprints. One horse's head uses a natural rock spur, yet also possesses a tiny painted head, creating a dreamlike effect. Younger red ochre fish, dots, and signs overlay the horses, a palimpsest of millennia. This art represents the symbolic revolution. The mysterious leap Homo sapiens took around 40,000 years ago, transcending millions of years of hominid stagnation. Anatomically modern humans existed for over 150,000 years before this explosion of symbolism, art, and religion. Why the lag? What triggered this shift in consciousness? This is archaeology's greatest riddle. The cave art, as the earliest complex expression of this new mind, holds the clues. The question remains, why did they do it? The archaeological riddle deepens when considering the universality of supernatural belief. Across cultures and history, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, ancient Egypt, Maya, Druids, humans consistently believe in unseen realms, spirits, gods, and an afterlife. Why? Evolutionary psychology suggests religion fosters social bonds, but fails to explain the specific, often illogical content of these beliefs, entities, other dimensions. Why not more practical ideologies? The neuropsychological model offers a partial answer. Altered states of consciousness are a universal human capacity. Hallucinations in ASCs, induced by plants, drumming, fasting, could be the origin of supernatural concepts, with shamans as specialists navigating these states. David Lewis Williams and others argue cave art depicts precisely these shamanic visions. Yet Hancock critiques the academic detachment. Theorists accept ASC's role intellectually, but often dismiss the visions as silly illusions without personal experience. Can science truly rule out other dimensions? The brain as receiver model, perceiving normally inaccessible realities during ASCs, remains a valid, though unpopular, hypothesis. To judge fairly, Hancock needed first-hand experience beyond Ibogaine. He travels to the Peruvian Amazon to drink ayahuasca, the vine of souls. Why ayahuasca? It allegedly transports users to supernatural realms for ancestor encounters, mirroring iboga. And Amazonian shamans like Pablo Amaringo paint their visions, directly linking AS to art creation, potentially echoing the cave artists. Ayahuasca presents its own mystery, a sophisticated biochemical combination of a DMT-containing plant, Psychotria viridis, with the Banisteriopsis caapi vine, containing MAO inhibitors crucial for making DMT orally active. How did indigenous peoples discover this precise synergy among myriad plants without modern chemistry? Shamans say the plants taught them, a claim Hancock finds worth considering. Hancock recounts his ayahuasca sessions, 10 in total across Peru and Brazil, revealing a consistent, complex, yet deeply strange visionary universe. The ceremony itself is steeped in ritual. The shaman prepares the brew, smashing the vine, layering leaves, slow cooking. In a jungle hut at night, he performs invocations, blows tobacco smoke, shakes rattles, sprinkles agua florida, sings icaros, magical songs to call spirits and guide the journey. Hancock receives a small cup of the vile-tasting liquid, bittersweet, salty, notes of cocoa, medicine, rot, feeling he partakes of a living, formidable spirit. La purga, the notorious vomiting or diarrhea, is an expected possibility. After about an hour, behind closed eyes, the visions commence. Geometric patterns appear first. Nets, ladders, stacked screens, alive, pulsing with dark light, luminescent violets and reds against blackness, swirling like galaxies. It feels like a drum roll, an anteroom. Focusing deeper, the patterns resolve into the skin of a gigantic serpent, scales like windows revealing spinning purple circles, peacock eyes, nebulae. Synesthesia kicks in. The shaman Zekuros visually manifest, weaving through the patterns. He feels himself rising through ethereal levels, like Gnostic realms. The vision shifts to organic forms, purple jellyfish fabric overhead, strobing with pearl-like lights. Throughout, Hancock maintains rationality, notes the absence of purging so far, and his ability to switch between the visionary realm, eyes closed, and mundane reality, eyes open. He feels he's only reached the anteroom, not fully broken through. Determined, despite the repellent taste, toad blended as a beverage, he accepts a second dose, hoping for deeper immersion. 40 minutes later, the familiar geometries return, pulsing with the renewed chants. The giant serpent skin with iridescent eyes reappears. Pyramids and tribal masks flash briefly before fading. He hasn't entered the other world fully yet, but the power of ayahuasca to generate complex, coherent visions is undeniable, setting the stage for more profound encounters. The key to unlocking the cave art mystery, argues Hancock, lies in the recurring depictions of Therianthropes, human-animal hybrids. These aren't simple hunting scenes, they depict supernatural beings absent from everyday reality. Consider the Sorcerer of Trois Frères, a composite nightmare with wolf ears, owl eyes, stag antlers, horse tail, lion claws, yet a human torso and legs. Bison men appear at Fuman 35,000 years ago, Chauvet 32,000 years ago, and El Castillo 15,000 years ago, the same motif spanning 17,000 years. Similar figures exist in African rock art. Where did the concept of such beings originate? Enter David Lewis Williams' neuropsychological model. It posits that all humans can enter altered states of consciousness via various triggers, psychoactive plants, drumming sensory deprivation like deep caves, fasting, pain, or even spontaneously. These ASCs unfold in universal stages. First, entoptic phenomena, geometric patterns generated by the nervous system itself, grids, dots, zigzags. Second, construal. The brain tries to interpret these abstracts as familiar objects. Third, iconic hallucinations, vivid, immersive visions of animals, humans, and crucially, therianthropes, often accompanied by sensations of flight, transformation, or entering vortices. Lewis Williams argues cave art is a direct record. Geometric signs are entoptics. Realistic animals are iconic hallucinations or construed entoptics. Therianthropes depict shamanic transformation or spirit encounters. The cave itself, dark and silent, facilitates trance and symbolizes the tunnel vortex hallucination. Evidence? Modern lab subjects given hallucinogens report identical entoptics and therianthropes. And the extinct San Bushmen of South Africa explicitly stated their similar rock art depicted shamanic trance visions, detailing spirit guides, transformation, and specific entoptic interpretations. Even the wounded men fit. The piercings represent universal painful somatic hallucinations of deep trance, culturally interpreted as spears. They depict the shamanic ordeal of symbolic death and rebirth. Lewis Williams' model powerfully explains the art's origin and content. But Hancock remains troubled by its reductionism, the insistence that these powerful visions are merely brain-generated fiction, devoid of objective reality. This sets the stage for investigating the beings themselves. Hancock's own visions felt undeniably real, populated by intelligent entities in coherent, albeit strange environments. This subjective certainty clashes with science's dismissal due to lack of objective proof. His intuition grows. Might these beings be real entities operating on frequencies normally beyond our senses, accessible only when consciousness is altered? This resonates with earlier thinkers who questioned the brain as solely a generator of consciousness. William James, after nitrous oxide experiences, saw waking consciousness as just one type, with others accessible via stimuli through a subliminal door. Aldous Huxley, post-mescaline, proposed the brain as a reducing valve, filtering overwhelming reality for survival, letting only a measly trickle through. ASCs open this valve. LSD pioneer Albert Hofmann saw the brain as a receiver, tunable to different reality wavelengths via hallucinogens. Rick Strassman's DMT research offered modern corroboration. Volunteers consistently reported contact with beings in other realities, leading Strassman to embrace the receiver model, speculating about parallel universes or dark matter as their location. Hancock's research thus shifts from confirming visions exist to investigating their potential veridicality. He plans further experiments, psilocybin, DMT, despite fear and legal hurdles. But a second, unexpected research path emerges, striking parallels between the bizarre surgical procedures reported by shamans undergoing spirit initiation and those reported by modern UFO abductees examined by aliens. This leads him to compare these phenomena. The core alien abduction narrative is summarized. Abduction by small humanoids, transport to UFOs, painful medical procedures, return with missing time, memories often recalled via hypnosis. Hancock clarifies his stance. He disbelieves the literal nuts and bolts extraterrestrial hypothesis. His own ayahuasca encounters with alien-like figures support a visionary interpretation. His goal isn't proving ETs exist, but exploring these experiences as consciousness interacting with other realities or intelligences, whatever their origin. The parallels between shamanic initiation ordeals and UFO abduction procedures are disturbingly specific and detailed, suggesting more than coincidence. Consider piercing and needles. UFO abductee Betty Hill reported a needle inserted into her navel. Sandy Larson felt her brain removed. Betty Aho described eye removal and implants inserted via luminous needle. Scott felt neck electrodes. Jerry, a neck needle being turned. Catherine, penetration through the nostril into the brain. Joe, a needle implanting a silver pill and wires in his neck. Compare this to shamanic accounts. A Yakut shaman pierced in the head by a spirit lance. Arunta shamans lanced in the neck, tongue, mouth. Warramunga shamans having their noses pierced. Ojibwa shamans pierced by spirit needles. River Patwin shamans pierced in the navel by lances. Now consider implants and crystals. Aho's devices, Joe's silver pill and crystals shown on his son. Compare this to Dayak shamans having gold dust put in their eyes. Wotojobaluk shamans receiving magical stones and head wounds. Kobino shamans having crystals replace their brain and eyes. Forest River shamans having rainbow serpents and quartz crystals inserted into their bodies. Finally, organ removal and replacement. Abductee Larson's brain removal. Karen feeling her heart removed. They opened up my chest. Eva describing a spine operation, inserting it between my flesh and my skin. Compare this to Yakut shamans having limbs removed, bones cleaned, flesh scraped, eyes torn out. Arunta shamans having internal organs cut out. Binbinga shamans cut open, insides removed, replaced with sacred stones. Warramunga shamans having organs removed and replaced, sometimes with a snake put inside. The sheer bizarreness and detailed similarity of these traumatic procedures, reported independently across vastly different cultural contexts. Modern technologically saturated societies versus traditional shamanic cultures, strongly resists explanation by chance or subjective invention. Hancock argues this points towards an underlying objective phenomenon interpreted through different cultural lenses, a deep pattern hinting at the reality of these troublesome things. The parallels extend beyond procedures to the very methods of transport and destinations. Millions report UFO abductions, yet science dismisses them as delusions. Psychological tests, however, show abductees are generally sane, often suffering PTSD, suggesting real trauma occurred. John Mack's view of these events crossing over from unseen realms resonates. Could aliens and spirits be the same non-physical intelligences, UFOs the modern guise of the spirit world? Consider the modes of ascent. Abductees describe effortless floating, levitation, or being drawn up in beams of light, often blue, sometimes feeling like tunnels. Shamans, like the Basuto or Winnebago, are carried off to the sky. The motif of threads or ropes is strikingly specific. Abductees report threads of light from their navel used for pulling or climbing a spider's thread of light to a craft. Compare this to northwestern Australian shamans using ropes of air, Kulin shamans climbing threads like spider webs. and Kung Bushman shamans vividly describing ascending ropes or threads of silver light to the big god's place, even seeing other shamans on these ropes and mentioning wells of metal in the sky. Even vehicles parallel. Yurok Samoyed shamans reach skyboats by rope, Bull Lodge saw a flying shield lower a cord, Australian shamans reach the bird wombu via string, cultural construals mirroring UFOs. Cubio shamans see star people descend in scintillating lights trying to carry them away. A Bushman shaman felt a light made him float. The destinations also align, countering a sky-only focus. Both traditions report journeys underground or underwater. Shamans speak of caves as portals, Australian Aruntarenia in lit caverns. Abductees like Betty Aho describe UFOs entering the sea, then crystalline underworld caverns. Filiberto Cardenas taken via tunnel beneath the sea. Carlos Diaz saw a UFO inside a cave. Lucy abducted into a hill leading underground. Scott took an elevator down to a rock-walled place. The sheer number and specificity of parallels in transport, floating, beams, threads, and destination, sky, caves, underwater, argues strongly against independent invention. It suggests shamanic journeys and UFO abductions are different cultural expressions of the same underlying encounter with non-ordinary realities and entities. Perhaps the most pervasive and perplexing parallel across shamanism, fairy lore, and alien encounters is the consistent focus on sexual intercourse, reproduction, and hybrid offspring. Shamanic traditions are replete with this theme, often linking it to the very origin of shamanic power. Siberian myths tell of shamans born from mortal spirit unions, or souls incubated in nests on a spirit tree. Kuna tradition speaks of a sky spirit arriving on a golden disc, Olopare, leaving shaman babies behind. Darker Pais myths describe a supernatural jaguar raping a woman, producing hybrid shamans who fathered monstrous offspring. Explicit accounts of ongoing sexual relationships between shamans and spirits abound. Bariat and Teliut shamans had celestial spirit wives, often preferred over earthly ones. A Goldie shaman married a beautiful small spirit woman who provided spirit helpers. A Warao shaman, using tobacco trance, traveled to the sky house of smoke, inhabited by insect spirits, repeatedly having intercourse with a beautiful bee girl and fathering hybrid insect children, echoing modern insectoid alien reports. An Algonquin hunter married a sky maiden, had a hybrid son. A Saura shamaness in India was abducted via whirlwind by an underworld suitor, forced into marriage, learned shamanic arts, and bore spirit children needing her breast milk. Mexican shaman Don Soltero Perez, called by dwarf-like enanitos, was married to an enanita spirit wife in a cave, forbidden sex with his human wife, and had spirit children there. Amazonian folklore tells of boto dolphins shape-shifting to seduce mortals into the underwater city Encante, resulting in sickly hybrid offspring, while otter spirits induce intercourse in dreams, producing similar pale children on Earth, but potentially powerful shamans if born in Encante. These narratives establish spirit-human sexuality and reproduction as fundamental to shamanic power and worldview. This shamanic obsession with interspecies reproduction finds direct, detailed echoes in modern UFO abduction accounts. Female abductees frequently report forced intercourse or artificial insemination. John Mack summarized the complex reproductive project: impregnation, fetus removal, incubation tanks, and later presentation of hybrid babies. Male abductees report sperm extraction and being shown hybrids claimed as theirs. The reported ambiguous or non-functional genitalia of aliens mirrors the Yoruba myth of tiny penised shamans. The famous Villas Boas case involved forced intercourse with an ethereal yet animalistic alien female, feeling used like a stallion. Yet some abductees, like Peter feeling his alien lover was his real wife on a soul level, echo the shamanic celestial wives. Screen memories, intercourse initiated under the guise of a human spouse whose face phases, parallel the Amazonian dolphin spirit disguised as a husband. The theme of hybrid offspring is central. Abductees like Knapp, Jerry, and Catherine describe UFO nurseries filled with rows of tanks or drawers containing numerous hybrid fetuses or babies, often in liquid, scenes strikingly similar to the Siberian shamanic tree incubating souls in nests. Karen's UFO vision of a huge tree with nests containing eagles offers a direct symbolic overlap. Aliens consistently present listless hybrid babies to their human parents, insisting they need maternal contact. Hold the baby, Nurse the baby. Unrelated abductees are required as wet nurses, experiencing induced lactation, or as playmates for unresponsive hybrid children. The descriptions of these hybrids are consistent and unsettling. Large heads, thin bodies, pale grayish, translucent, scaly skin, wispy hair, fragile, listless, old-looking. Traits evoking repulsion, gross baby, unnatural. These descriptions align perfectly with accounts of changelings in European fairy lore. Why this universal obsession with interbreeding? One abductee, Lori Biggs, was told aliens wanted to combine human solid form with their luminous form to become more permanent, more powerful, echoing precisely the folkloric reasons given for fairy abductions, injecting human robustness to strengthen the dwindling fairy stock. This shared reproductive agenda across millennia and cultures might be the strongest evidence for a single, persistent interaction between humanity and a consistent, non-human intelligence. The connection between modern aliens and historical fairies isn't mere speculation. It was explored decades ago by thinkers like Carl Jung and Jacques Vallée. Jung, analyzing the 1950s UFO flap, noted sightings weren't entirely new, often involving visionary rumors, yet seemingly physical aspects, radar returns, creating insoluble puzzles. He cited historical precedents, the 1566 Basel event, black globes fighting, vanishing, the 1561 Nuremberg phenomenon, plates, globes, tubes in the sky, even a 12th century codex showing a pregnant woman connected by a tube to an overhead object with eyes, discs, presciently echoing later abduction themes. Jacques Vallée, in his 1969 book, Passport to Magonia, extended this historical perspective, cataloging 19th century UFO reports, Chile 1868 aerial construction, Texas 1878 large saucer, proving sightings predated the modern era. He traced parallels further back, Agobard's 9th century Magonia cloud ships, Japanese records of strange aerial vessels, 10th 18th C, links to Sumerian winged discs, Hindu Vimanas, biblical chariots, Elijah, Ezekiel. Crucially, Vallée highlighted Genesis 6, sons of God mating with human women, producing hybrids, as a direct parallel to the spirit shaman and emerging alien-human reproductive themes. Vallée's central thesis, modern UFO belief is the old fairy faith. UFO occupants are elves, sylphs, lutins, the secret commonwealth. This term comes from Reverend Robert Kirk's 1691 book detailing his own claimed contacts with fairies, distinct order, human-like intelligence, supernormal powers, live invisible. Kirk's mysterious disappearance in 1692, believed locally to be an abduction into the cave-filled fairy knoll, links fairies to underground realms, echoing shamanic alien accounts. Fairies weren't just earthbound. Lore describes aerial travel, Irish fairy hosts in fairy winds, flying fairy lights, Welsh with teg flying at will, fairies in spectre ships, French farfadets in whining chariots disappearing mid-air. Vallée recognized the shared reproductive agenda, rape, marriage, abduction, hybrid offspring to strengthen their race, need for human midwives, wet nurses, in both fairy lore and early abduction reports like Villas Boas. Hancock notes later data, especially wet nursing parallels, only strengthen Vallée's insight, suggesting a single persistent, shape-shifting phenomenon interacting with humanity across millennia. The deep connections continue when examining abduction mechanics and fairy technology. Consider the Rathlin Island midwife story, summoned at night by a shadowy man, transported in a magical coach drawn by 4 horses that travels impossibly fast over rough terrain, floating, arriving at a hill whose side opens up, revealing a beautiful palace inside, the fairy knoll. She delivers a fairy baby, recognizes previously vanished locals within, confirming abduction, sees one nursing a baby, declines an invitation to stay, and is returned safely. This tale encapsulates multiple motifs: abduction for aid, hollow hills, fairy feasts, potential time distortion. That magical coach finds echoes in modern UFO reports, where crafts appear disguised, abductions via black Cadillacs, fire engines, motorcycles, soaring cathedrals, even carnival booths or kangaroos transforming into spacecraft. The form seems culturally adapted. Intriguing glitches occur where disguises mix archetypes. Children seeing medieval jester like elves driving small motor cars, 1979. A tiny man in pointed hat driving a tiny red car, 1940s. Children seeing a tiny airplane piloted by a tiny humanoid, 1929. Fairy-like beings using a hose from a spherical object on water, 1914. A 3-foot humanoid in green fairy attire emerging from an egg-shaped UFO, 1957. These suggest the underlying phenomenon manifests through available imagery, sometimes blending eras. The wet nursing theme recurs vividly. Mrs. Sheridan, early 20th C. Ireland, recalled being away among the fairies in a large, round house, UFO-like, commanded by the mistress, with a tall stick to breastfeed silent children. Compare this to Kirk's 17th C wet nurses in sealed rooms and modern abductees in UFO nurseries commanded by a leader using implements or eye contact for control, sometimes experiencing induced lactation. But fairy encounters often implied greater danger, permanent abduction, Kirk's fate, and severe time distortion. Welsh tales describe people watching fairy dances or entering rings for subjective hours or days, only to return decades or centuries later. Missing time in UFO abductions seems a milder version. The fairy dance ring itself, often linked to circular grass formations, appears as a portal technology. Cornish piskies danced in rings before vanishing. Swedish elves burned rings into ground. A Welshman saw beings dance in a circle before disappearing. Was the dance a technique for activating fixed interdimensional portals, potentially dangerous, with the UFO as its modern equivalent? While similarities abound, differences suggest evolution. No modern changelings swapped, no permanent abductions, less extreme time dilation, induced lactation. This evolution argues against static archetypes, suggesting interaction with an adaptive external intelligence, whose core reproductive agenda, however, remains constant. What are these beings? Spirits, fairies, aliens? Experiencers describe a paradoxical nature, made of light, yet having some physicalness underneath, a light contour, but not physical. This aligns perfectly with historical fairy accounts. Kirk's pliable bodies, subtlety of the spirits, appear or disappear, Rochewich's summary of light, changeable bodies, altering form at will, nature of a mist or condensed cloud. Descriptions from Brittany, aerial and transparent, Suffolk, light and shadowy, not solid, West Ireland, City as pale beings, almost gray. A core shared trait, they aren't fully material, existing in a liminal state. Yet when humanoid, consistent descriptions emerge. Both fairies, elves, Scandinavian elves, Breton Corrigans, Manx fairies, Welsh Tylwyth Teg, and aliens greys are predominantly small, 4.5 feet, often with large heads and thin limbs. Grayish skin is noted for city and commonly reported for aliens. Taller individuals exist occasionally in both groups. Sexuality appears ambiguous. Fairies seen as male, female, or sexless. Aliens often indistinguishable, identified by subtle cues despite lacking secondary characteristics. Social structures parallel. Uncertainty if fairy organization is conscious or hive-like echoes perceptions of alien society, with taller beings commanding drone-like small beings. Shared abilities suggest advanced manipulation of reality. Both fairies and aliens are reported to induce invisibility, pass through solid walls and closed windows, aliens showing a peculiar preference for windows, often accompanied by intense vibrations reported by abductees. The fairy blast causing unconsciousness, or elf shot causing internal wounds, parallels alien zapping, paralysis beams, light beams knocking victims down, green light causing unconsciousness. The Finnish skier's case, 1970, bridges the gap. A green-suited, conical-hatted fairy figure emerges from a hovering UFO and uses a light beam from a black box to paralyze a skier. The overwhelming evidence points to spirits, fairies, and aliens being cultural interpretations, local customizations of the same core phenomenon. Deep similarities in appearance, abilities, social structure, and interaction patterns, abduction, reproduction, resist dismissal as coincidence. We seem to be dealing with intelligent, quasi-physical entities interacting with our reality consistently yet adaptably, true dancers between worlds. If these encounters aren't mere brain fiction, what is the mechanism? Part 3 shifts focus towards dimethyltryptamine, DMT. Recapping Part 1, the symbolic revolution, 40,000 years ago, cave art Therianthropes, linked by Lewis Williams to ASCs likely via hallucinogens. But the reality of encountered entities remains open. DMT, chemically related to psilocybin, serotonin, and ibogaine, and produced endogenously in the human brain, emerges as a potential key. Rick Strassman's DMT research is crucial, specifically the consistent reports 50% of volunteers of entity contact, beings, aliens, guides, helpers, often appearing as clowns, reptiles, mantises, bees, spiders, stick figures. Strassman shifted from dismissing these to accepting volunteers' experiences as is, interactions with beings in other dimensions. Hancock, needing first-hand comparison, recounts smoking DMT resin. His first attempt yielded only mild effects. The second, breakthrough attempt, involved intense physical disorientation, whirlwind, menacing serpentine visuals, then projection into a strange, pristine geometrical space. Inside this machine realm, intelligent, fast-moving, non-visible entities operated complex equipment in a teaching environment, flooding him with incomprehensible data, adjusting output based on his panic. They felt like big-brained robots, part of the room's machinery. A third attempt yielded a different vision, an ivory tube covered in moving black lines, scripts, numbers, hieroglyphs, morphing into ant spiders, then into tiny, paired, writhing snakes resembling DNA helices in a constant dance. Hancock notes similarities to Strassman's data, machine-type things, inside a computer's boards, clowns, jesters performing. He concludes DMT reliably induces encounters with intelligent entities in technological or geometric environments, often involving data transfer. It seems to act as a key, tuning in to channel DMT, allowing consciousness access to a specific, structured, information-rich domain, whether internal or external. Diving deeper into the DMT experience via Strassman's volunteers reveals recurring themes echoing Hancock's visions and the wider phenomena. The DMT world feels artificial, technological, contrasting with ayahuasca's organic nature, perhaps linking to fairy alien technology. Volunteers described machine realms being rewired, seeing computers' boards and equipment. Surprisingly common were carnivals and clowns, merry-go-rounds, crazy circus sideshows, with performing jokers, clowns doing their funny little thing, paralleling ayahuasca park imagery, UFO carnival disguises, and even shaman Maria Sabina's psilocybin clown dwarfs. Direct encounters with DMT elves, jovial or prankish, and Tinkerbell-like entities occurred. Communication and interaction were key. A green-skinned female controlling a panorama, asking what else would you like? Symbolic surgery performed. Nurseries reappeared, rooms with cribs feeling like a child, Mayan hieroglyphs morphing into toy rooms, high-tech nurseries attended by Gumby-like figures. The alien laboratory trope was strong. Space stations, white rooms, receiving information, feeling fiber optic probes in pupils, implants inserted, being overseen during experiments. Sexual bonding recurred, feeling flushed with orgasmic energy with a friendly being, reassurance from an elongated headed female showing a communication device. Unsettling insectoids appeared, terrifying creatures probing the psyche, interested in emotion, challenging beliefs, manipulating DNA, residing in hyper-technological hives, possessing the experiencer with an agenda. Importantly, pre-1960s DMT research, Sarah, Turner Merlis, and Leary's 1966 writings reported similar alien dwarf insect encounters before these became widespread cultural tropes, arguing against simple contamination. DMT seems to reliably grant access to realms inhabited by consistent entity types, elves, clowns, reptiles, insectoids, humanoids, engaged in consistent interactions, teaching, probing, surgery, reproduction, data transfer. Why would evolution hardwire us for such specific, bizarre encounters? The DNA connection, hinted at in Hancock's snake helix vision, offers another speculative path. Volunteers reported seeing DNA spirals, threads linked to meaning, and Rex felt insects changing his DNA structure. This leads to Jeremy Narby's hypothesis. Could ASCs allow access to intelligent messages encoded within our own DNA? Jeremy Narby's radical idea, fueled by ayahuasca experiences, posits that DNA itself is minded or contains intelligence accessible via ASCs. Hancock, conversing with Narby, explored the view that DNA might hold a message, or a bunch of messages, placed there by ancient, rather clever, non-human entities. Narby argues DNA, the resilient master of transformation creating Earth's biodiversity for 4 billion years, is an incredibly dense information storage system, 2 meters packed into each cell nucleus. He controversially views it not just metaphorically, but as a literal, sophisticated biotechnology, possibly arriving from elsewhere, challenging spontaneous origin theories. Could shamans, and others in ASCs, be decoding information stored within their own DNA? Tryptamines, like DMT and DNA, share biochemical roots tryptophan, perhaps enabling access. The 97% non-coding or junk DNA becomes crucial. Far from useless, linguistic analysis, Eugene Stanley, 1994, found non-coding DNA perfectly obeys Zipf's law, mathematical property of all human languages, and exhibits Shannon redundancy, error correction capability of true languages, unlike coding regions. Stanley concluded it possesses all the features of a language and may carry some kind of message. Furthermore, the discovery of ultra-conserved elements, long non-coding sequences identical across humans, mice, chickens, despite millions of years of divergence, suggests they carry vital, preserved information. If non-coding DNA contains an intelligent, ancient, language-like message, who authored it? Chemical chance faces astronomical odds. Crick calculated 1 in 10 to 260 for one random protein, let alone the whole system. Hoyle's hurricane in a junkyard analogy captures the absurdity. The universal genetic code across all Earth life points to a single, ancient source. This leaves two main possibilities: external intelligence, Crick's directed panspermia, alien seeding DNA, or immanent intelligence, consciousness itself encoding life's principles in DNA. Could the universally encountered spirit teachers, Therianthropes, etc., be visualizations generated by accessing this DNA-encoded information? Could DNA be the guidance system activated by ASCs that sparked the symbolic revolution? This reframes ayahuasca plant teachers and Kalahari spirit guides as interfaces with this internal, ancient wisdom. While speculative, the DNA message hypothesis offers a powerful explanation for the universality of forms and content in visionary experiences, grounding them in our biology, yet hinting at intelligence beyond random mutation. Finally, Hancock turns to organized religion itself, arguing that beneath doctrines lie hidden shamanic roots grounded in the visionary experiences of founders. Religion's enduring power stems not from abstract philosophy, but from direct supernatural encounters by individuals functioning as shamans. Moses talked with God face to face. Muhammad received the Quran from an angelic being. Mani was guided by an angel from age 12. Paul's conversion came via blinding light and a voice. Jesus' life mirrors shamanic archetypes: hybrid origin, healing gifts, initiatory ordeal, crucifixion, resurrection, saving souls. Early Gnostics exemplified this, seeking direct gnosis, knowledge, through visionary states, viewing the material world as illusion, beliefs echoing shamanism worldwide. Their suppression by the institutional church marked the burying of these experiential roots, replaced by dogma administered by priests, Labar's bureaucrats of the sacred, who often lack personal visionary experience. Yet shamanic vestiges persist. Santa Claus arguably preserves Siberian shamanic fly-agaric traditions: costume, chimney entry, reindeer flight. The cult of saints features figures achieving status via shamanic feats, healing, miracles, initiatory ordeals like piercing or dismemberment, Saint Sebastian, Saint Teresa. Jeanne d'Arc conversed directly with spirits' voices, linked explicitly during her trial to pre-Christian fairy lore, fairy trees, healing springs, conflating white ladies with Our Lady. The shrine at Lourdes originated with Bernadette Soubirous' visions at a grotto linked with fairies. Her apparition, initially a little lady fairy term, in fairy-like attire, emerged from a cave opening after wind-cloud phenomena, instructing her on herbs and a healing spring, classic shamanic transmission. The ongoing miracles confirm powerful phenomena, arguably the fairy queen under a Christian veneer. Overlaps between Marian apparitions and UFOs reinforce the idea of a single phenomenon construed differently. Knock, 1879, involved a glowing globe and shining, untouchable beings. Fatima, 1917, included prior angel encounters, monthly apparitions with UFO-like effects, buzzing, colored lights, falling petals and toptics, luminous globe, culminating in the miracle of the sun, a spinning, zigzagging disc witnessed by 70,000. Shamanism, grounded in ASCs and entity encounters, lies hidden at religion's core. Recognizing this reveals our enduring connection to altered states and the other worlds they seem to unveil. The final synthesis returns to the central mystery. Are these beings real? Reductionist models fail to explain the specificity, universality, and interactive nature of encounters. The brain fiction and hardwired explanations lack explanatory power and evolutionary logic. Narby's DNA message hypothesis is intriguing but struggles with the interactive, physical aspects. Hancock finds the receiver model most compelling. The brain, retuned by ASCs, accesses real, normally imperceptible dimensions inhabited by consistent, intelligent, though non-physical, entities, spirits, fairies, aliens. Their consistent agenda seems to be interbreeding, hybridization, seeking influence or form in our reality. These may be the ancient teachers who catalyzed human symbolic thought. Science must move beyond ridicule and investigate these phenomena seriously. Reality is likely far more complex, consciousness more potent, and our evolution intertwined with these hidden dimensions and their inhabitants.